2.
Is it Monday already? You know what time it is. That's right, everyone. NFL Goal Line is back like we are every Monday. We got a great show for you today. Phil Nunziata, Nick Rice with you as always. Great show on tap. Let's get it going. Maurice Jones-Drew ends his holdout. What does that mean for the Jaguars moving forward? When it comes to the Dolphins, a horrible wide receiver core comes to mind. Is there any options left for them to bring in before the start of this season? Who will be the most underachieving team in the NFL this year? And one of the greatest all-time Eagles says goodbye. All this and more on NFL Goal Line.
All right, thanks, Phil, and welcome to the broadcast. We are live on Spreaker.com. This is the NFL Goal Line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata. We have a special guest to the program coming up in just a few minutes. It's our very own Sean Kramer that'll be joining us on the broadcast. We'll be talking Jaguars football, taking a trip to Philadelphia for some update on the Eagles' very own Brian Westbrook. And then, as Phil mentioned, we'll also take a trip around the National Football League. Who's the most underachieving player? All that and more on NFL Goal Line. Let's get started with our trending topic of the night, which is Maurice Jones-Drew. Finally, after 30 days of holding out from the Jacksonville training camp after some failed contract negotiations, and they also were just failing to get a deal done because Maurice feels like he needs that big deal, that top 5 running back contract, maybe even the best, most paid running back in the league. So for Maurice Jones-Drew, it's one of those things, he's got to swallow his pride and just go out and play. He was back on practice just yesterday on Sunday, and Phil, right off the bat, we have some big news. Maurice Jones-Drew, what are your thoughts on him finally returning back to the Jaguars field?
Well, for the sake of all football fans, whether you're a Jaguar supporter or not, it's definitely good to see because Maurice Jones-Drew, one of the most talented players in the NFL, and you just want to see him out there. You want to see him play. You want to see him excite you. He's a very entertaining guy to watch. In Jacksonville, they call him Pocket Hercules because he can be in the middle of that pile and just push it forward. But, I know plenty for the Jaguars, but I think it's time that I bring in someone here that knows a lot more than me when it comes to Jaguars. I'm bringing in a good friend of mine, huge Jaguars fan, Sean Kramer. And Sean, I know you must have been happy when you heard the news that MJD is coming back.
Oh yes, very much. I was so happy to see him back with the Jaguars and finally end this holdout that was causing too much of a distraction.
Well, and the most confusing thing about it is not a lot got accomplished. He's back in camp, and there's still no contract, and it almost seems like a loss of time. Do you think? Right off the bat, missing all this training camp, he's going to be exactly where he was last year, which was the league's leading rusher?
Well, he's not going to be starting Sunday in Minnesota, but I think he looks like he's in pretty good shape, and he should be 100% from a knee injury that he had last year, that he hid from everybody, and he was still able to be the NFL leading rusher. So I think he should, after this week, probably a couple ups and downs, he should be right back where he is.
Well, that's a good point, though. If he had a knee injury that didn't hide that he hid from people and was still the leading rusher, definitely, something to look out. And as you said, he won't be starting in week 1. He will be playing, as I understand. He'll be in more of a third down back kind of role. But without him starting, obviously, Rashard Jennings will be the man in the Jaguars' backfield. How do you feel confident in that first game with him being the main guy in the backfield?
Well, from watching him in the preseason, he looked very good. And even from last year when he got playing time, he has definitely been a solid backup running back and somebody who could carry the load when Mojo is out. So I think with our running game, we should be just fine in Jacksonville.
Well, and it's very interesting with the team that they're playing happens to be Minnesota, which leads them to a similar situation of Adrian Peterson not necessarily being able to go. So this might be, Toby Gerhart might be the guy for them. But it definitely leads to a lot of situations. During any of this tampering, this 30-plus day holdout, did you ever think you were going to have to see MJD in a different uniform this year?
Not really. I know there was some things said about he was open to trades and all that, but I know he's been loyal to the city of Jacksonville ever since we drafted him back in 2006, I believe. So I know things got rough there for a while, but I knew that Maurice Jones-Drew is very loyal to the Jaguars.
Well, it's definitely good to see some sort of loyalty in sports because you don't see that a lot. I think one of the things that most people agree with is he meant more to Jacksonville than anybody else, and it really sums up. Now that he's back and he will be, playing on this team, do you think he'll eventually get the money he deserves?
Yes, I think he will, because the new ownership definitely had a lot of guts, not giving into his demands and not just giving him what he wants right off the bat. So I think what he said in his press conference when he came back was true. You should be able to be paid more for producing more, just like you can take a pay cut or possibly get cut if you don't produce enough. So he had a solid point of why he held out, because he's definitely been the top running back, the past 3 years. But my personal opinion, I think all players should honor their original contracts.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, whatever you're getting paid, you stick with it. Once that contract's over, then you look forward to it. Well, very well done, Sean. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you. No problem. Anytime.
All right, we're always looking for a very interactive show. Sean Kramer's our very first guest on the broadcast. And now, before we get any farther, we're looking for a very interactive show as always. I mean, this show would not be as big as we already are on Spreaker without you guys. All the fans have been really supportive in our entire 4-week-long journey so far through recapping all there is to know about the NFL. And our number to call is 951-515-4552 to get onto the show. Now we have our second caller in of the night. His name is Cameron Sadeghi, and he's live on the show. And Cameron, we're talking MJD. His holdout for over 30 days finally ends with a trip back to training camp just a few days ago. And Cameron, what are your thoughts on how quickly he returned without even getting a deal done? And do you think he'll return back to his leading rusher form, as Phil mentioned earlier?
Yeah, because let's be honest, the Jacksonville Jaguars offense runs through him. It's him all the way, or else they have absolutely no offense. So he's going to get a lot of touches, even though as a report to practice, he's probably not as in shape as he was last year. But I still see Jones-Drew. He's going to be slamming through. He's one of those type of tough runners that he can go for 30 to 35 carries at will. He can go 25 carries. This guy's a workhorse. I still think he's in top in the top premier class. And let me tell you this: when you said that about the holdout, and you guys were talking about that, I actually say that the reason why he kind of held out was because the contract issue. As we know, he wanted to get more money. But when you don't have a contract, you have to. Some players don't go and report because they're afraid that if they get injured, they don't get the medical benefits from the organization that will help them out. So that's why Jones-Drew didn't report. I know from a fan's perspective that some people may call that lame, but from the business aspect of the NFL, that's the truth about how contracts work and how players react to holdouts and how they handle that situation.
Well, that's definitely a good point. Players always have to, in this line of work, your body is your tool to make your money. And there's a lot of players, they'll be having a great year and they get injured, and a team is not willing to put the financial backing behind them for the sake of them getting injured again and not being able to produce the way the money that they'd be given would suggest. So that's definitely a good point. I think players, it's almost a security for them to make money while their body's still able to perform at a high level. I think that's a very good point.
And by the way, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars will be NFL this year. That's my bold prediction.
Excuse me, can you say that one more time, Cameron?
I think the Jacksonville, I'm going to go on the record and say the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be the worst team in the NFL this year.
It's
a pretty
interesting how
bold
you,
prediction.
yeah, very bold prediction. Actually, right here, put that on paper before the season starts. I would have to agree with you because last year it was on record that 48% of the yards gained by the Jaguars was indeed by Jones-Drew. To top it off with a defense that cannot stop the pass, cannot stop the passer or stop the runner. It's obviously very hard for the Jaguars to win any games with a guy that just barely got back into camp. Now, the National Football League is one of those, is just a league where if you're not at the top of your game, you're not going to produce. I mean, for a guy, let's just look over for Terrell Owens. He's out for 1 year, and he's considered to be from one of the best receivers. Any team would want to snag him. He had over 1,000 yards with the Bengals in 2010. He doesn't make any sort of play on the NFL field. He does play, I think it was the Arena League. He comes back, and he's absolutely horrendous in the preseason with the Seahawks. So it's one of those things that if you're not at the very top of your game and if you're not dealing with all this speed across the field, you're not used to, the fast pace of the game. I feel like it's MJD the first month that's going to be struggling the most, along with the Jaguars.
And
Yeah.
are you guys going to talk about disappointing teams yet, or should I wait to call in?
I think we're going to jump to that pretty soon, so we'll look forward to hearing from you again once that starts.
Okay, I want to talk about that too. I have a team in mind.
All right, Cameron. We'll have you back in just a little bit. Thank you for joining us. You're our very first caller onto the program. We certainly appreciate it, Cameron. And there goes Cameron. So the call-in number is 951-515-4552. And let's just get this on record, Phil. Do you think that the Jaguars are indeed the number one pick in the draft for next year, obviously with now MJD back in camp?
Well, I could definitely see why Cameron or anybody would say that, but here's some things you need to look into. I think it's almost impossible for Blaine Gabbert to play any worse than he did last year. So it's safe to assume, he's looked, strides better in the preseason than he did last year. So he's, going to improve there. And I think the thing that people are forgetting is they finally have another playmaker on that offense by drafting Justin Blackmon. He also played very well in the preseason. Last year they had close to their best receiver would have been the third best receiver on any other given team in Mike Thomas. And, they went out and they got Justin Blackmon. They signed Leonard Robinson from Dallas, who had, I think 10 or maybe even more touchdowns last year. It's definitely, they're definitely going to be a little bit better. I could see them not necessarily making the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be the worst team. I think there might be one or two or maybe even three teams before them.
All right, well, we have our second caller on the line. This is Daniel Levy. He was part of the NFL analysis. Me and Dan went strides in determining a lot of things going around the National Football League. He's a big Bears fan. Obviously, he's one of those guys that will have his team on his back. But for a team like the Jaguars, Daniel, we obviously, both me, Phil, and Cameron, all agree that the Jaguars certainly – maybe not the first overall pick, but certainly aren't making strides in the positive direction. How do you feel that MJD now back in camp, will that help the Jaguars, or in a way, will it even hurt the Jaguars this year?
MJD, obviously, I think he's the best running back in the league, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. I think one way or another, the Jaguars are the absolute worst team in the league. Their defense is definitely still questionable. Their offense is absolutely nothing to brag about. Obviously, with Maurice Jones-Drew back, they have a decent running game. But what I don't understand is, and I'd love your input on this as well, is I don't understand why the Jaguars would refuse to start Maurice Jones-Drew even after he's come crawling back to them. And also, why did he come crawling back to them, especially with the injury issue? If he does get hurt, he doesn't get those benefits. And also, he deserves the money that he was asking for. So I really don't understand what Maurice Jones-Drew and the Jaguars' mindset are in this whole saga.
Well, as you brought up the injury concern, I think that has a lot to do with why they don't just throw him right back into the offense. Because, these guys have had, a month plus of practice together with this year's team. And to start him, he's obviously one of the best running backs in the league. And, big difference is he will be playing. He might not start the game, but he will play, and I'm sure he will see a significant amount of time. And I think the main reason they just don't start him, they don't want to throw him in the fire at risk of injury. They want to slowly push him back. I'm sure he's in shape, but he might not necessarily be in, Maurice Jones-Drew shape. So it's something they want to ease back into it. They